This is the No More Wasted Days podcast, and we're your hosts, Sarah Kaufman Bradstreet
and Heather PG. Grab your favorite NA drink and listen as we share vulnerable stories so you never feel alone on your alcohol-free journey.
And gain insights from us as we break down our most used tips and strategies that have kept us alcohol-free.
It's time to break free from wasting any more of your days to the drinking, blackout, hangover cycle.
Welcome to another episode of the No More Wasted Days podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sarah.
I'm Heather.
And we are back with part 2 of our Q&A episode where people got to ask us questions and we are answering them. So if you haven't listened to part 1, you can go back and listen to it, but it is not a requirement because the questions were brought to all of you to us. So they're going in no particular order. All right. Are we ready to just dive into this one, Heather?
Let's dive on in.
Okay. On the last episode, I read the questions, so I'm handing that task off to Heather this time.
Yes, I will take the question baton. All right. So ways to deal with anxiety and fear without alcohol or in your alcohol-free life.
Well, I think that this one is something that you just have to take head on. Look at it as a little positive challenge for yourself. But I have a few different things that I use just when anxiety is really high. One thing, all of you know, I love my meditation. It is my baseline. It is not, I never am like, oh my God, I'm so anxious, I'm going to go meditate. I never do that. I probably should, but it is really the thing I do each morning to start me out in the best place. But one thing that I love doing is a presence check or a sense check. And I do this with myself. I do it with my daughter, but all it is checking in with your 5 senses when you're feeling anxious. So what can you smell? What can you see? What can you hear? What can you taste? What can you feel? One of the day makers taught me that. And I use that so much. One of the things is that it gets me back into the present moment. But a lot of times when you're stuck in anxiety, you're stuck in fight or flight mode. Mm-hmm. So you're just kind of on that, like you're running from a tiger, right? So you're not in the present moment. You're just in that flight. And when you do that sense check, it just brings you back. So that's my number one way. Do you have some things that are your go-to?
I do. When I start working with folks one-on-one, I have a 2-page little resource sheet that I send. So like temperature, you want to change temperatures in your body to try to help with anxiety, regulate your nervous system. So I have an ice roller that is intended for your face, and you can use it anywhere. But if you put ice on the back of your neck or run cold water over your wrists, that can be really helpful if you have the space for this. Fill up a bowl of cold water and dip your face in it. And how that works is it's changing your breathing. And we have so many nerves and muscles in our face. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of shocks us out of it.
Oh, cool.
So those are some. So temperature. And if heat is your thing, you could do a heating pad or warm water. Take a bath if you can, or a shower. And there are a lot of little exercises that you can do in public that aren't real obvious. If you take the space between your thumb and your pointer finger and massage that area, that's really helpful. And you can lean against a wall, your back against a stable wall. Not like doing a squat, although you can do that too. But you can kind of do that to ground yourself. Something as simple also as taking your flip-flops off and going standing in the grass to ground yourself.
Those are also helpful.
Yeah.
The temperature one is so useful. It's interesting because I'm not a fan of the whole ice bath idea because
absolutely not.
I'm chronically cold, except for in the summertime when then I'm really hot and then I'm angry that I'm hot. So, but.
Right. For me, it's too much of an extreme, but I think the short things that are a little more practical.
Yeah.
Can get you through the anxiety.
And I love that all you need to do is like on your face or the back of your neck or your wrist, because each morning I do rub really cold water under my eyes. And I used to always do it because I don't wash my face before I go to bed. Everybody, please don't come after me. I try to set the goal each month to start a nighttime routine with face washing. It just has not stuck. But so normally I'm doing it just to clean off the mascara before I put in my contacts. but it started becoming such a calming thing in the morning and kind of like a nice wake up thing.
Hmm.
And I need to remember to use it when I'm just feeling stressed, when I'm feeling
Yeah.
anxious, because it really does help. And it's not a whole putting your body in a tank of cold water, which
Right.
looks so unappealing to me because I feel like I would never warm up again.
It just, I deeply dislike hot weather. And I just think that sounds like a commitment that I just am not here for. Another thing I was going to say, I wash my hands a lot. As I mean, I'm a mama, and everybody should wash their hands. I just wash my hands a lot. So, like, you get some soap that smells really good, like you were saying, the senses,
Hmm.
and wash your hands. You can do that anywhere.
And just change what you're smelling, and there's a bunch of other stuff you can do. I've started looking into EFT tapping. Have you done any
Mm.
of that?
Oh yeah, I tap during my EMDR sessions.
Oh, okay, cool.
Hmm.
And if you're interested in that, you can look it up on YouTube and start, and people will walk you through. I can never say if I love it or if I'm doing it the whole time and being like, this is totally ridiculous.
Hmm.
Because I do think that way about some things. But I hear a lot of people say that it helps them so, so much. So I always
Yeah.
go into it with an open mind as I'm doing it. And I will say when I do it, I always feel more calm
Right.
afterwards. So I haven't gotten to the point where I'm good at it and can walk myself through it. I have to listen to a guided EFT session that's online, but
Hmm.
that helps.
That's a really good suggestion. And I have no science to back up what I'm getting ready to say, but think about when we're impatient and we're tapping or clicking a pen.
Mm,
I wonder if there's something correlated with that movement involuntarily to
yeah,
tapping.
there might be. Gosh, and I'm a fidgeter.
Oh, me
So
too.
when you say that, I'm like, oh, that could be. Because I think a lot of times it's I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
kind of tapping or moving. I think it kind of takes my mind off things. But
Hmm.
one other thing I was going to say on anxiety, dealing with it without alcohol, is the thing that helped me the most in the beginning was telling myself that alcohol wasn't going to help it and it was only going to make it worse.
Correct.
And it sounds too simple to be helpful, but I would walk around the house being like, drinking won't help this. It will only hurt this.
Right.
And it would just be a way to be in my head with a little mantra, walking around the house saying it, and it would get me to the next day. And I would always be so happy that the next day I didn't drink and I didn't load more anxiety on top of my anxiety. So
Right.
that definitely helped me.
Yeah, it definitely will help. And at first, your anxiety will feel different, and you can learn more techniques for quote unquote normal anxiety because everyone experiences anxiety.
Yeah, yes. And the other one is managing fear without alcohol. I feel like a lot of those things are so similar for me, but I
Hmm.
do feel like fear is often a thing where you got to go do something that's freaking you out, but you just got to go do it. So it's that whole like, okay, well, you have to do it. Whereas with anxiety, you're kind of trying to calm yourself from it. I mentioned on the last Q&A the idea of telling myself I'm excited, not scared. That
Hmm.
helps me a lot. Just that little shift of words sounds silly, totally works. So
Yeah.
if you're hearing it the second time, try it. I think too, I try to see myself on the other side of the scary thing. What's it going to be like once it's over? What am
Right.
I going to feel like then?
Yeah. I always think too, if it's an emotion that I find uncomfortable, like what's the opposite of it? So for me, the opposite of fear is safety. And when I say safety, I typically don't mean physical safety. I mean emotional safety and anything that you can do to foster perceived
Yeah.
safety is helpful. Having a friend that you could call, a safe space to write out your feelings.
Hmm.
And going back to the emotional sobriety episode, like a lovey, by that I mean like something that you can carry that brings you a feeling of safety.
Yeah. Yep. I like those reminders. I like the little idea of a levy too.
Yeah.
Um,
And like, depending on the situation, you can just say fear is a lie.
that's such a good one. It sounds so simple, but I bet that one will help a lot.
All right. So someone asked thoughts on naltrexone.
Did you take now? You didn't take Naltrexone, did you?
I did not. And I think it could have been really helpful for me in my situation. I took a webinar on naltrexone last year.
Mm-hmm.
It was really informative. I'll spare all the details. I think doing your own research is really helpful. I'll also think if you're like, well, I don't want my primary care doctor to know,
Mm-hmm.
there are other providers
Oh, okay.
and you can look up who they are in your area. I do think that there are some places that do telehealth that will write the prescription and send it to your pharmacy.
Okay.
Again, this is area specific.
Very cool. Yeah, I think anything that will help you is a useful tool.
Amen.
So whenever people are like, did you use it? Would you recommend it? I would recommend anything that makes you feel comfortable about starting your alcohol-free journey. And maybe naltrexone doesn't even do anything for you, but it's a placebo effect. Use it. I don't think that that's real. I don't think that that is an actual thing. I think it actually does help people.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just like, yeah, go for it. If you think it would help, I do know I've talked to some people who didn't like the side effects of it. So do your research. But those people still, they tried it and they went, this isn't for me. So I'm not going to do it anymore. Get the support where you can, however
Yeah.
you can.
And you could look at it like an antidepressant. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is it won't fix everything.
Yeah.
It will not take the reasons you drank away. It will not do the work for you. It's a tool inside the toolkit if you choose to pursue it. And if you're a person that's like, I'm thinking about it and I don't take medicine, think about the return on investment. Like alcohol is ethanol. So when you're curious and concerned, which is legitimate about what you're putting in your body, think about the
Yeah.
return on investment in terms of side effects or long-term use of naltrexone or any medication.
I really like that comparison because I was a self proclaimed health junkie that was drinking every single night. So it's like so ridiculous when I look back at it. And I'm like, I was afraid of Diet Coke. Like, oh my God, don't drink Diet Coke. It has so many chemicals in it. And then I'd be drinking my wine and my beer and my gin and tonics. It's so dumb.
No, it's not. It's like, I mean, just this shows you are very health conscious and alcohol takes no prisoners. No
Yeah.
matter where you are, it can become a higher priority than your true self.
Yeah.
So,
And I would like people to know now that I have no opinions about Diet Coke. If you enjoy it, please drink it.
yeah, I like it.
I know. I'm like, I accidentally got some Diet Pepsi in our last grocery pickup. And I was like, I've been enjoying this. Thank you.
So, the next question is marriage relationship changes after sobriety, navigating through with a significant other that still drinks.
So I didn't have a significant other that still drank. You didn't have a significant other that still drank.
Nope.
We are
Nope.
terrible people at answering this question.
Yeah. I think for me, in that area of my life, it mirrored a lot of things for me that my ego and stubbornness would have not said.
Mm-hmm.
When it showed me, like, oh, oh. No, I was too proud, right, to say that. I don't know. I had something to prove. I don't know to who.
Martha quit drinking before you. Yeah.
Yes. Before me. And when I work with folks one on one who say that their partner still drinks, like how much and like how much does it bother you?
Mm-hmm. I always ask people to, have you talked to them about it?
Mm-hmm.
Because and I hate to be that person, but it's also like, sometimes it's such an easy conversation that we think is going to be really hard, that
Right.
we work up in our brain like, oh, they're going to really judge me because I'm quitting, and everybody's in a different place, right? And it could be too that it's going to be a really hard conversation, but it's a conversation you need to have. And I guess
Yeah.
that goes back almost to like your non-negotiables. Are you quitting drinking for 30 days as a break to see? Then be really honest with your partner and say that. Do you think you're quitting forever? Be really honest with your partner. Because Ryan thought he was quitting forever. I did not. I was waiting for him to be over this idea that he was quitting drinking forever, and I was going to go along with him until he gave up. But I was like, I'm going to go along with him. Fortunately, I fell in line pretty
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
But it's okay to kind of be at different places than your spouse, but I do think there is a huge part of being supportive of one another.
Yeah. And talk to them in the morning after coffee and breakfast. I wouldn't suggest having this conversation with them while they're intoxicated or drinking.
Yeah.
or during a time right before they would normally drink. And it also depends on how much they drink. And ask yourself, am I setting myself up for success if I'm still making their cocktails for them and handing them to them in the evening? Is this an issue where if it's in the house, I'm going to drink it? And give them an opportunity to talk and create solutions together with their input. That's a good kickoff part.
Yeah. I love your tip to talk about it in the morning too, before
Yeah.
you've had any chance to be angry at each other.
Yeah, and make sure that everybody's had a snack and something to drink, right?
Yeah, exactly. I will say that one thing that just bothers me to no end is when people say, my spouse says, or my partner says, they don't need to quit because they're not the one with the problem.
Mm,
That
yeah.
comment drives me bonkers. And
Hmm.
I have talked about it on TikTok, and people get really angry at me because they're like, oh, partners don't have to do everything that their partner does. And I'm like, but when you are saying, I'm not the one with the problem, then it should be so easy for you to quit.
Right. And also that's minimizing and just, I'm not the one with the problem. Like
Oh my God. Oh,
it just, you might want to revisit some communication stuff there too.
yeah. So it is something that's going to bring up just a few layers to your relationship. But I will say for me and Ryan, it was amazing to quit drinking together. We still enjoy not drinking together. And it was a cool thing to do. And we were drinkers together. Whoa, we were total drinkers
Right.
together. I wasn't sure I was going to like him without alcohol.
And you and Ryan have an episode about that. And then you and I think one of our very first couple of episodes was about this topic. So go check those out too. That might be helpful.
Yeah, because I think the one about that we did together, me and you, I think it's like episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like me and Ryan's I might be like episode 19. So I'm probably wrong on those numbers, but it'll get you into the right hemisphere so you can,
Yeah.
when you're scrolling.
So, this question, ever find staying sober was too easy? I feel like this should be harder and worried that I'll crash.
I love this question because this was me. I I took to being alcohol free. Like for whatever reason, this time, because there were times where I did it and it wasn't easy, but this time it was. And I always tell people if it feels easy, it's probably just the right time. And
Yeah.
we've had a member of the Daymakers. I think she just hit 6 months, and she's always saying, "You guys, it still hasn't felt hard. It's just felt amazing." And I'm like, "That's okay. Keep going
Yeah.
with that. Like it is
Right.
totally." And she's like, "I just keep waiting though for," and I'm like, "Maybe it won't. And by the time it does, you'll be so strong on your journey that it's okay."
Yeah. And if it's easy, you clearly made the right choice for yourself and
Yeah.
you can do some of the work and choose your heart. Like if staying sober is easy, and maybe it's because you are putting in the work and that's where it could be hard.
And I think too, for me, it was easy because I changed my mindset. I decided it was going to be easy. I decided it was going to be fun. And I
Hmm.
know that that is not everybody's story. And I know that that takes a lot of work. But I will say, I was writing down affirmations every day. I was practicing gratitudes every day. I was doing the things that I tell everybody else to do to make it a little easier. And it shouldn't feel like white knuckling because you don't want to be in a position where you're going to white knuckle for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's not going to be sustainable. So,
No.
how was it for you? Because I know it was different.
Hard. And then it got easier. And I was so afraid to say I was confident because I thought if I said I was confident about being alcohol free, I'd fuck it up.
Oh, yeah. So, you were kind of in the space of like, I don't want to get too confident, too cocky,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
because then I'll feel like, I don't even have an issue. I don't even need to do this.
Yeah. Then I learned a lot more about confidence just as a whole, and it made it better.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I do know that your first like 30 days were my only
Mm-hmm.
goal, right? Not my only goal. My biggest goal
Mm-hmm.
right now is to not drink.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see how some things in life have been really easy for me. And I'm like, is this going to sneak around and get me 9 months from now? So I think it's normal to be like, oh my God, this is so easy. Why? Like, is the shoe going to drop? I think that's completely normal and really valid.
Yeah. And I think ride that pink cloud, as they say. I remember when I heard about the pink cloud, I was like, excuse me, I've been riding mine for like 6 months. So
Right.
don't tell me it's going to stop, because it's not going to. I will say that now being alcohol free is just not as exciting. And that's kind of a bummer to me. In the
Hmm.
beginning, it really was like that one TikTok sound of wow, wow, whoa. It was that. Like I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Oh, everybody has to try this. This is the best. And now it's kind of like, oh, this is just my normal life. But then I can quickly go into the whole I wake up in the morning and I'm so excited about the day. I remember everything I said the night before, and then I still get excited about it.
Yeah. And I think that anybody on an alcohol free journey have a plan B in case you feel like you might crash.
Yeah. What are you going to do if it gets hard?
Hmm. Yeah.
What's going to be your plan of action then? Because I've had moments where I'm like, oh, this feels uncomfortable, but I've had a plan.
Yes.
So,
Y'all know I love a plan.
and always do the work, people.
Yes, definitely. We have two more questions left, and hang on because they're both really good.
Yeah.
What qualifications do you have to support those with drinking problems?
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You go first, Sarah.
Okay. I have no qualifications that you might see on paper. I have not done any online certifications or in person certifications to support people with alcohol problems, but I have lived experience. I was a teacher for 18 years, and I know you may be thinking, what does that have to do with anything? I know how to break down tasks into their smallest pieces to make them achievable for people. So I was able to look at my own success and say, how did I do this? What were the smallest pieces? What are the tiniest tips I can give people if they're really struggling? And I feel like that confidence has really helped me break down the task of quitting drinking. I also just love the research of the effects of alcohol on our body and our mind and our emotional self. And I love sharing that with people. So while I may not have any certification that you'll see on paper, I do have a huge passion for this and I love helping people. And I would love to get a certification at some point. The timing just hasn't been right for me in my life. But I think the cool thing about the world we live in now is you can share your story. And if it inspires people, that's great. And sometimes I think just being that step ahead of other people is huge if you're willing to share and be vulnerable. And I'm willing to do that.
Yeah, and you're a really good teacher in our calls and the way you ask questions and encourage us to do things. And your research is thorough and very educational. And I learn something every time I attend one of the calls.
Thank you.
And lived experience is really helpful because you can relate. And I say this because I've been in therapy since I was 18. And some of my therapists who had never struggled with substances personally, I felt like they just didn't get it.
Yeah. I'm excited for you to share your qualifications because Heather has a lot, you guys.
I am a social worker. I've been a social worker for over 20 years. I am a certified life coach, and that has nothing to do with alcohol. I was a substance use counselor while I was still a drinker, which is just funny to me. And in August, I am getting another certification that is related to recovery. So,
Oh, cool. I know I've been looking at a few different programs just because I love the research. I love learning
yeah,
about this stuff. So I'm like,
me
that's
too.
more for me with the certification piece. I'm like, oh, that would be so cool to not to have the certification, because I think that you can have a certification and you can do nothing with it.
Right.
If you're not willing to go out there and share and help and get out there and spread your message, then it just kind of sits there, right? But
I have
I
several of those that just sit there.
I do too. And I still like those because,
Hmm.
they served me. But I'm excited to learn this stuff. So when I look at different programs, I'm like, oh, I should look into doing that. So
Yeah.
that's my my long answer to that. And always when you work with me too, I let people know I'm not a licensed therapist.
Uh,
I
Me
don't
neither.
have certifications. And if that is something that's really, really important to you, then you should find somebody with those certifications. But my uncle was a guitar teacher and he'd always tell me, you only have to stay one step ahead of your students.
I love that.
I know
Yeah,
that helped me so much when I was a teacher because I would be like, "Oh, I'm not really good at this thing," and I'd be like, "It's all right. I only have to stay one step ahead of my students, and I can do that."
I love that. I have a sign on my desk that says I'm not your therapist. And that was from when I was in the nonprofit space. And I'm also not a therapist.
Sometimes I just have to remind myself. You know,
So the last question is, how do you manage holidays where everyone else is drinking? The 4th of July is their holiday.
so by the time people hear this, the 4th of July will be past, but
Mhm.
there's plenty of other holidays coming up.
Our first recording of this podcast was about this very topic.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's episode 1. So,
No, I think we recorded it and then
oh,
I think it became like episode 4 or 5.
oh, gotcha.
But it was our first one we recorded together.
Yeah, go check that out for sure. And I think that if it's a summertime holiday where everyone else is drinking, going back to socializing, do you have to go to the cookout? The answer to that is probably no. And if you choose to go, Sarah, this is one of my favorite tips from you. So I'll let Sarah kick us off on this, but visualizing it being alcohol free and successful.
Yeah. And visualize that it's going to be fun without alcohol. Visualize all the good parts of it being alcohol free and be super specific when you're visualizing. And what I mean by that is think about how you're going to do your hair. Think about if you're going to wear makeup or not. Think about what outfit you're going to wear. That's all a part of it because the more specific we can be, our brain thinks it already happened. So get into the nitty gritty on the details and then start thinking, who am I going to talk to? What am I going to talk to them about? What drink am I going to have in my hand? What drinks am I going to bring along? What am I going to do when somebody asks me an uncomfortable question? What answer will I have? And just get as detailed as possible and then picture yourself driving home sober. That's such a good feeling. And waking up the next day without a hangover and how amazing you feel. The more specific you can be on these visualizations, the better. Because 9 times out of 10, everything you visualize doesn't even happen. But your brain thinks it's already been to this function without drinking. It's really cool, the research out there about how it works, and that these visualization practices make it so your brain goes, oh, we've already done this. This is pretty easy. Olympic athletes use this. So it's a proven thing. Visualize before you socialize. That's one of the things that I always tell people. It rhymes, it's easy to remember.
Yeah. And if it's your favorite holiday, like Sarah, I hear you talk about it too, gamify it. Make it a game, meaning challenge yourself to win, right? You're going to go and you're not going to drink and you're going to win
Yeah,
by doing that. And you actually really do.
you really, really do. And I will say that all of the holidays I've gone through without alcohol have been better. Some of
Yes.
them have been different the farther I go on my journey. Sometimes I am kind of like, this is kind of boring. Everybody's
Mm-hmm.
getting wasted around me. That doesn't happen very often because I really don't hang out with a lot of people who drink to the point like to where they're getting wasted. But if I do find myself in that situation, I have a plan to go home. And it is
Yes.
okay to have that plan. And I will tell you, it's easy to leave people who are drinking because they don't care that you're leaving and they won't even really remember.
Yep.
There's a lot of little positives to when people start getting too drunk that you can just be like, bye.
Yeah,
And
for
they're
sure.
like good with it.
And practice really good boundaries with yourself and the crowd.
Mm-hmm. And I will say with 4th of July, I kind of changed how I did it because it was a drinking holiday for me. I would wake up in the morning and it was one of those waking up in the morning, having mimosas because it's the 4th of July. And then I would
Mm-hmm.
just drink the whole day. I don't even know how I made it through the day when I look back at it now. I look
Mm-hmm.
back at the amount I used to drink and I'm like, what in the world? How was I functioning? But it was my truth. It's what I was doing. Now I have changed it up. We go to the lake and kayak all day. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the cool things is a lot of people don't go do outdoorsy things on 4th of July. And usually the weather's really good and you can get out there and enjoy nature, and not as many people are there because they're all day drinking. And it's
That's a
pretty
good
sweet.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then we would still come home and shoot off fireworks in the neighborhood when we lived in our neighborhood, just the little guys, like what's legal in town type thing. But our son loves fireworks. So we let him do a little fireworks show for us. And it's all easier without alcohol. That's what I found. I
Yeah.
found that I was always stressing when I was drinking, almost that it was cutting into my drinking, like, oh, now we got to do the fireworks. Yuck.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, time for the fireworks. Owen's going to lead the show. No big deal. I'm just so much more laid back on holidays now.
Me too. And treat yourself to a special dessert. Keep yourself in the reward space and not like, "Ugh, I can't drink. This is going to suck." If you
Yeah.
think it's going to suck, it will.
Yeah. Totally. Oh my gosh. I used to say that to my middle school students all the time when they'd want to audition for a solo and they'd go, but I can't. I'd go, all right, well, then you can't. Like, it
Right.
sounds very blunt, but I would always tell them, like, if you think you can, you can. And if you think you can't, you can't. And
Exactly.
it carries me through. They used it on me one year when we went to a theme park and I said, I can't ride the roller coaster, you guys. No, absolutely. I
Yeah.
can't do it. And the student looks at me and goes, Mrs. KB, if you think you can, you can. And if you think you can't, you can't. And I was like, oh my God.
And you're like, there it is. My teaching is paying off for these kids. And now it's being used against me.
And I rode the roller coaster and I lived. I told myself, I can. I think I was
Yes.
totally like, I can, I can. It was so scary, but I did it.
Well, this concludes part 2 of questions and answers for the No More Wasted Days podcast. If y'all have questions, send us a DM or comment on our social media. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the show. Leave us a rating and a review. It takes about 30 seconds. It's the best way you can support our podcast, and it's free.
Yeah. And honestly, feel free to reach out through the DMs or if you're connected on my email newsletter, ask questions because even if I don't respond right there, I use those questions to just drive what I'm talking about on social media, on the podcast. It's just, I really
Yeah.
do work to like, what do you guys need? So ask those questions. And if you're going through dry July right now, I hope it's just totally kicking ass for you.
Right. All right. See you next week. Bye, y'all.